Quick story there. I had one client break down a wall and he found like he had a cold room, which he never knew he had for like 5 years.
You had a cold room.
Yeah,
A
an
hidden
entire cold room. He assumed because the seller was like, yeah, this is just all blocked off. It's just a normal wall.
So Hamilton has $1 billion worth of like permitting every year, and imagine the lineups when you're refining a drawing.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's not easy there. But luckily, because of the new zoning bylaws from last August 2022, they have kind of helped us out in the parking situation.
Welcome to the fourth episode of The Real Side of Real Estate, where we keep everything real. The good, the bad, the ugly. We talk about it all. We have a special guest here tonight, Mr. Henry Rojas, BCIN and designer. How are you, sir?
Not too bad, man. Appreciate you bringing me on here.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. I love to have a designer on here. There's a ton of questions I want to ask you, my brother.
Perfect, man. You
There's
got my
a ton
attention.
of questions. We work with investors all the time, and investors have all these questions. How do I convert a duplex? How do I convert a single family to a duplex, duplex to a triplex? You add value to these properties, right? And like one of the main things that people always bug me about is like permitting.
That's the most common question we're getting now.
And who better to ask than someone that deals with all the time, the BCIN or designer. So how'd you get started in this, Henry? Tell me a little bit about how you got started. Did you always want to be a designer, or?
Yeah, no, I could say my entire life, all my family has actually done construction. They're all very handy with their hands. They've done construction for so many years. That's all they know. That's all they love. I started doing that a little bit when I was 16, 17, but found out pretty quickly I wasn't very handy. Like, it's in the bloodline, but just for me, just skip the generation. I don't know. I know what to do. I'm just like.
So what did you try? Did you try flooring?
I tried flooring. I tried paint. I tried demolition. Like it's just too much dust or too much work or too much cutting. Like I can do it. I don't have fun doing it.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's just like it kills half the battle there. But then I realized, that's only part of the industry. Like construction is like part of that whole formula. So I was like, okay, what else can I do to like be part of the family, but not really be part of the construction part.
The trades, yeah.
So I found out pretty quickly, like, we need permits, we need drawings, we need documents. Everything needs to be on paper. It's not like 50 years ago where you can do anything you want in your house and not worry about the city.
I love those houses when we demo them.
Yeah, you find out a lot of crazy stuff behind them. Honestly, I had a quick story there. I had one client break down a wall and he found like he had a cold room, which he never knew he had for like 5 years.
He had a cold room.
Yeah, an entire cold room. He assumed because the seller was like, yeah, this is just all blocked off. It's just a normal wall. And as we're doing demolition, he broke down that wall and just found, hey, I got an extra 40, 50 square feet of space. I can do whatever.
50 square feet. That's a lot, man. Yeah. That's not small.
But that's what I mean. It's like all these older houses, like they just cover things up. You never know what you can find.
Believe me, my brother, doing renovations, I've seen some stuff behind walls. Mm-hmm. It's like paper mache sometimes. It's like, your kids being a paper mache, putting it together. So I'm sure you have some great stories about that. So at an early age, you wanted to be a designer, right?
Yeah, I enjoy designing a little bit. The architectural portion of that was very interesting in terms of like, you can do something on paper and then people will actually build this, in real life. And a lot of people appreciate the design and aspects of it. So very early after I graduated, I started in a custom home design firm in Oakville back in 2017. So worked from there, did a couple custom homes, massive house additions, and enjoying life a little bit until, at the same time, I'm working with Taco as as a side hustle.
So Taco being Mark.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're working together a little bit, and he brings me a little bit out of the real estate world there. Okay. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. It's not custom homes, but it's just normal unit layouts. I'm like, okay, I'll help you out. We'll work together a little bit. Mm-hmm. And as I'm doing my stuff in the morning, at nighttime I'm doing some real estate stuff, going on the phone with him, discussing about layouts, how to do A, B, C, D. I'm like, okay. And then we're doing that for a couple of years, and I'm switching jobs in the meantime from like residential to commercial. To at one point I was working with an apartment building firm that does global like apartment buildings. They've
Wow.
have properties in Europe, in the U.S., in Canada. So I was helping them out there, and that was during the COVID, a whole
Oh,
pandemic
okay. The
situation
last
there.
2 years, yeah.
So at that time, I was already well known how to do the apartment buildings at the daytime, and also helping talk at night with some other stuff. So he asked me, if I can be a construction manager
Oh,
at that
great,
point, right?
great.
So I'm like, you know what? It's COVID. I'm bored at home. There's nothing else to do. I might as well go outside,
Yeah.
learn a little bit more. So it was a good opportunity for me to kind of get back in there, not be really too handsy, just more of managing. So I was like, okay, what can we do? What happens when I give talk on my drawings on site? Because I don't hear too much feedback until like there's an actual problem.
Until you got some city calling you and say, well, you got to move
Yeah.
this, you got to move that around.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that happen after I give the drawings that I wasn't aware of until Taco brought me on, and I was working on a couple of projects with him.
I see.
And there's a lot of things that happen on sites that you don't need to really bring the designer. It's just a pain to deal with.
Oh, I can imagine. Like sometimes and through my own experience, I've had designers put so many toppings on that pizza. It's like, why do I need a smoke detector in every room? Like, in the strobe light ones, they're expensive, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, and then you get the permit approved. Now the city's like, well, it's on your drawing.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, you want to change it? Well, you got to resubmit it, make the changes, and then you got to wait. And so you got to be very careful, ladies and gentlemen, with these drawings, because once they get submitted, and if they get approved, you know better than I do, then you kind of got to go by them, right? Like,
Yeah, they consider it to be like a legal contract. That's what it really is. So you have to follow it to the letter. And that's why it's even very difficult for us designers to kind of like make sure we're following building code, but also making sure we're not, costing our investors an arm and a leg for something we don't need.
yeah.
So a lot of times what I do is I like to assume the worst, but on some drawings we'll just take a chance on them. We don't need a balcony or we don't need A, B, C, D. Let's see what the city says first, and maybe it can be an open discussion.
Yeah.
And sometimes we win those battles, sometimes we don't, and if we can get away with half the things that we don't need to do from the get go, perfect.
And you know what? That's great that you do that, because some designers just put the works on it, on the drawing, and they're like, okay, well, this will pass. They're not really thinking about the cost for construction. Yeah. They're not thinking about the aggravation from moving wiring or plumbing or roughing in things or moving walls. They're just thinking, okay, I'm going to do my job and get you the permit.
Exactly.
And then I'm going to pass the baton to the contractor that's going to be fuming. And then they're going to pass it on to the owner that's going to be more fuming because it's going to cost them double. It's happened to me before where I've had drawings passed down to our team, and it's like, why was this even done this way? But it was done this way based on Toronto standards. So Toronto is different than Hamilton. So that's something I want to actually touch on. How the cities are different. Like, ladies and gentlemen, the cities are different. Like, you're not going to get the same permit in Toronto that you're going to get in Hamilton. Everybody has different criteria, things that they look for. So tell me a little bit about that. Like, so what's the difference between like a city like Toronto and Hamilton, for example?
Yeah, there's different ways to fire rate a unit, I would say. A lot of times in Hamilton, what we understand from some inspectors is that we have to fire rate the entire ceiling and then put up our walls in the basement, for example. Whereas in like Toronto or some other cities, you can fire rate a bit of the ceiling and then put up your wall, and there'd be like a sort of gap right there. But in Hamilton, they want it to be completely fire rated. So it's, more of construction methods there, which can be more of a pain for your contractor to kind of, I have to build a whole ceiling first and then put up my walls versus framing everything at the same time.
Yeah.
Right? So it doesn't seem that big, but for the contractor side, it's such a headache.
Yeah, and like, to your point, in Hamilton, the furnace rooms, they want this fire rated. So I don't know how much you folks know about these furnace rooms, but it's very tough to fire rate the ceiling in the furnace room because you got the furnace there, you got the hot water tank there, and it's a tight fit, but they want everything like sealed, fire rated, and it's so stressful for a contractor because you can't really frame it that well. You can use a resilient channel, right? But it's very difficult to do it, right? So, Hamilton being different, Toronto being different, which city would you say is probably one of the most lenient when it comes to permitting? So let's say a duplex, for example. If you're doing a duplex, what would be the best city or most lenient city to do a duplex in, based on your experience?
Right now, we are getting some of our current perms are getting approved pretty quickly in St. Thomas, in Thorough, Welland. I would say those are probably the top three cities at the moment, today, right now, that are really fast in permit approval.
So Welland's not too far from Niagara and St. Catharines. So what do you think about Niagara and St. Catharines?
I would run away, 100%. I am not dealing with them too often now. A lot of our portfolio was St. Catharines and Niagara about a year and a half to 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And the struggles we're dealing with was the city back then was just unbelievable. It was a lot of things that they didn't need to get into that situation in terms of specific code requirements and arguments and interpretations and restrictions, of course, right? But it is what it is with the city, and they have their interpretations, based on one person's experience.
That's true. That's true. So this new bill that passed, the Bill 23, right? It must have changed a bit, right? The cities are changing. They're in a transitional state, right? All of these cities. Now, some cities are caught up. Some cities are not caught up, right? I'm currently dealing with Niagara Falls on one of the projects that we're doing, and they have the rule, which is what you're only allowed to build 40% of the basement. So if you got 1,000 square feet upstairs, you're only allowed 400 square feet in the basement, and you're like, well, what am I going to do with the rest of it? So have you ever come across something like this?
And that was one of the reasons why we kind of left that area, because of that specific rule. And it's not just Niagara. There's a couple other cities out there that have the similar rules. Like London has a similar rule to that. Mm-hmm. So we try to stay away from London too.
Really?
And it doesn't even matter if that building you purchase is either 1 story or 2 stories or whatever many stories. It's 40% of the livable area.
And what do you do with the rest of it, right? You got to make it homeowner occupied. So you got to fire rate it and put a separate door. And it's kind of this is so much extra work and money, where the laws are going to be changing in a couple months where they're going to allow it, right? Even one inspector that I spoke to, plans examiner at the city. So, well, next spring, everything should go back to normal. And it's okay, so you want us to do it now, and then you want us to switch it in the spring. So, yeah, all the cities are different. So what is the challenges that you see compared to doing luxury homes and these investment properties? Because that's got to be completely two different beasts, right?
Yeah, I would say it's completely different. Back when I was doing custom homes and house additions, 2017, 2018, it was, we get our comments back. Nothing's perfect, but the comments we got back were minor 1-2 things about the new custom home, interpretation or whichever not. But when it came to investor focused projects, since we're working most of the time on existing conditions and trying to make that work into the unit configuration, it was a challenge because we had to prove the area. We had to prove the window area and the ceiling height. We had to prove so many things that could be an issue for exits, or just in case there's a fire. We're following everything to the letter.
Yeah.
Right? So I would say that's the more challenging part. Versus a custom home, it's a single family living in there.
It's a lot easier, right?
Yeah, it's less restrict. They're not really batting an eye too much on that.
So what do you think about older cities? We're from Hamilton. You get a lot of older Victorian style homes that some of them are massive homes on a small lot with no parking, and then you have to convert this to a fiveplex. You got to convert this to a triplex. What kind of issues arise in those kind of situations? You have a story about anything that you've encompassed with a project in Hamilton that you thought was wow?
Yeah, no, there's definitely a couple projects that we worked on where it seems almost impossible to add these many more units. And the number one issue was the parking situation, right?
Yeah.
Right now it has 2 parking spaces, but only has 5 units.
Yeah.
What do we do in that situation? And rule of thumb is we always go through minor variance committee of adjustments.
Oh yeah, and that takes time, right?
It takes time. They have Hamilton has their committee of adjustments every 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. But you're not going to get in 2 weeks later.
No, there's a lineup.
There's a huge lineup. So they were telling me a few weeks ago, it's about a month or 2 before you can actually get into your meeting.
So Hamilton has $1 billion worth of permitting every year. Mm-hmm. And imagine the lineups when you're refining a drawing.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's not easy there. Yeah. But luckily, because of the new zoning bylaws from last August 2022, they have kind of helped us out in the parking situation.
So tell us a little bit about that. What have they changed?
So in some specific areas in Hamilton, like off the top of my head, I can say R1, R1A zones in Hamilton. They'll let you keep the existing parking up to 3 units. As soon as you hit that 4th unit on that lot, then you have to add 1 more parking space. But if you're just converting your single to a triplex or duplex to a triplex, you can keep the existing parking. You don't have to add any more. So that's already one big major thing
that is
that
a massive thing. Yeah, right? I remember when I was doing duplexes a few years back, they had to be side by side. And one that I did not too long ago, they were okay with tandem. And I was like, it cost us another $10,000-$15,000 on like the driveway, asphalt driveway, widening it and all that. And now they're like, it's okay. So they came out with the new bill. I forgot the name of it. I think it was Bill 23. I'm not too sure. Where they said that you're allowed to have 3 units on one property. Is that only in Toronto?
No. So, and this is the thing. Bill 23 was approved last November. Yeah. End of last November, 29th, 30th, whichever it is. And it started its effect in January of this year.
Okay.
As of right now, there are some cities that are still implementing that into their systems because on paper, there's nothing really there yet. From what I've been told with multiple cities I've been discussing with, it's that they weren't really anticipating the approval so quickly. In a way.
Oh wow!
So they they didn't have already something in the back line saying, okay, just in case it's approved, here you go.
Caught them off guard.
Right? In a way, caught them off guard. In a way, they have to kind of have discussions, internal discussions about how they would interpret that. One example is the Niagara Falls area in St. Catharines, where if you're allowed 3 units, does that 40% rule still apply?
Well, it doesn't make sense, right? How could you have a 40% basement if you're allowed 3 units? There, you start thinking about garden suites. If you got a detached garage there, right? Like, can I do that? Can I not do that? So there's a lot of confusion right now.
There's multiple confusion, even with the planners. I've retained a couple planners throughout the year, this year so far, and these planners, they study the Planning Act and everything to do with zoning bylaws, like a Bible. They study that hardcore, and through multiple discussions, they have been telling me that even they're a little bit confused into what the city will allow or not. Right?
Yeah. You know what? I'm confused. The city's confused. I'm sure you're confused.
Well, what do we tell investors? That's the thing, right?
And that's the thing. Like in Hamilton, they're changing zonings. Like they're changing actual zonings of certain areas, and you're like, well, that was an R1. Now it's like a different letter and a different number, and I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
That encompasses this and that encompasses that. Okay, so if I don't change it, it's grandfathered. But if I change it, then I have to go by the new zoning. Have you dealt with that?
Yeah, that's the exact position we're in with about 2 of our projects right now.
Yeah.
And it's tough to kind of argue with them the fact that it should be grandfathered in versus having new. And a lot of times the city push on the fact that is it practical or not practical to do the said scope of work. Yeah. And of course, we could do it. We just don't want to do it because it's going to add too much cost and time to the project.
Exactly. Right? And you know what? There's a push for affordable housing. Right? At the same time, there's not enough units available for anybody to live in. And they're holding you up a little bit, right? I feel like it's getting easier. I feel it. I don't know if you feel it. I feel like they've hired a lot more plans examiners. They've hired a lot more city inspectors, in Hamilton particularly. It's getting easier than it was during the start of COVID. It was, oh my God.
That was tough.
That was a very tough time. People were pulling their hair out. I was pulling my hair out. To get a permit at that time where people were working from home, that was very, very, very tough and very challenging for clients too, because they're paying holding costs and the cost of construction went up and the cost of materials went up, right? So it was a really challenging time, but it seems like it's getting better. What do you think, Henry?
It is getting a little bit better, I would say. When I compare everything I've been through with the city examiners and inspectors, I'm just like, overall, it's getting better. Do I like the way it's going? Could be better, but I would say a lot of times with some other cities, they are getting overwhelmed with projects. For example, what was it? Port Cobar and I believe Erin, that's another town. They've gone so overwhelmed, they have to actually hire outside consultants to review the drawings. So we're not even dealing with the city. We're dealing with their outsourcing, I guess, consultants, which, by the way, guys, the building code does allow them to kind of hire outside consultants to help them at times like this. So you can tell right away, I can tell right away Port Cobar is definitely increasing in terms of development. So as soon as they tell you they're going to be hiring outside consultants, that should be kind of a flag to you saying like, okay, there's something going on here. There's a lot of development here. Like, why would they have to hire outside source, right?
And you know what? It makes sense because those are the outskirts, right? And the development is just pushed out that way, right? There's not enough space for them to develop because of the green belt, right? And they're trying to open that up right now. What would you suggest for an investor to get into right now, the current state with the rates being so high? Is it better to get a 5-unit if they can afford it, or is it better to do a traditional duplex, triplex? What would you suggest from your perspective, designer perspective? Like obviously knowing the challenges, right? But then obviously knowing the pros and the cons involved in doing a duplex or a 5-plex, for example. Let's compare the two.
Right. So we've definitely done our fair share of duplexes, triplexes, 4plexes. We've done them all the time. And from our understanding of like the contractors' rates and investors' holding costs and such, it's just a tremendous amount that majority of the time the numbers aren't really in their favor, especially now with the interest rates. It's a crazy amount of money that they're spending just to get 4 units. For me, for example, I just finished my triplex maybe a couple months ago, and the weight in, the construction, everything we had to do for that building was just not worth it to me for at least 3 units.
I see.
So especially since you can't even get commercial lending on 3 units, that's another.
So that's another thing I wanted to touch on. It's great that you brought that up. So this commercial lending, everybody and their mother's talking about this MLI Select program, the 95% loan to value. I'd love to touch on it with you. I'm sure that you've dealt with it or are probably dealing with it right now. So what does it encompass, the CMHC program, this MLI Select, correct? Is that the name of it? What does it encompass? What does it entail?
Yeah, so the purpose of this whole program, which, by the way, was recently released maybe a year and a half ago, give or take. But ideally, when you have 5 or more units into your building, you're able to be eligible for this.
Okay.
I believe it was 70% of that building had to be residential. I had to triple check on that. But regardless, you have more than 5 units, you can get into this program. And they have a checklist of items that if you have certain checklists of that, you could be eligible to get that whole 95 loan to value and 50 years, rate.
So I heard there's like a point system.
That's the thing. The point system is you have to make up 100 points. And there's different ways to get that 100 points, There's 3 different sections: affordability, accessibility, and energy efficiency.
So affordability meaning you have to make these units cheaper than market value, or
yes,
you have to make it market value. Right?
You have to get them a little bit cheaper than market value. I believe it was 80% of the market value.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
And then the interpretation here too, because I'm still working on that right now, does the units that are still in that building? Because when you buy a building, there are some tenants who are paying much lower than market value.
Correct.
So wouldn't those units be applicable to that already?
Well, that's probably a Residential Tenancy Act question, RTA question, which is a very good question to ask. Yeah. I'm not too sure myself. I'm going to have to ask someone, find out. But so it does have to be 80% of market value rent. Yeah. So that's one thing. What the second thing is, I heard there's an energy audit for that, right?
Yeah, so we get somebody to go out there to the building to inspect the building, what's currently there, and what they would recommend us to do for that building. Okay. A lot of times for our buildings that we're working on is more of heat pumps.
Heat pumps.
Right, energy efficiency. So we get rid of the boilers, we add in the heat pumps.
So the split systems you're talking about, the heating and cooling that go on the wall?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, those ones that they have in places like Mexico, for example, right?
I haven't been to Mexico, but they do have it.
They have it in Mexico. They have it in Mexico. They cool really nice and they heat really nice too. Like one of my properties is a boiler system, so it doesn't have AC.
Oh.
So it's got to be affordable. Affordability's got to be there. Mm-hmm. Energy audit's got to be there. What's the third? Like you said, accessibility, right?
Yeah, and it seems to be one of the toughest ones to kind of go through.
Okay.
Because a lot of units weren't really built originally to be accessible at all, 40, 50 years ago. Now, when you have to work on an existing building and make it accessible, you got to follow everything to the building code as of today, right?
Yeah.
For example, it's not really applicable today, but we did work on an accessibility unit in Toronto maybe 3 years ago now. We were just trying it out. It was way before all these programs came in. The apartment building team I was working with, they decide just let's make one unit accessible, like just because.
Accessibility meaning like accessible to handicap accessible, or are you
Yes.
talking about elevator accessible? Like what are we talking about here?
Yeah, more like the wheelchairs and people
Wheelchair,
who
okay.
needs like the additional help there.
Special needs and stuff
Yes.
like, okay.
100%. So this unit in particular, we had to change the entire thing. It's the kitchens had to be much lower, of course. You know, when somebody's on the wheelchair,
Yeah.
they can't really use the normal kitchen cabinet height.
Yes,
Right?
that's
So
true.
the entire kitchen had to be lower. What's it called? There had to be the whole bathroom had to be completely redesigned. It was a massive
Wow.
bathroom. You know, there's a huge radius for the wheelchair to be able to walk, like, you know, go around the bathroom.
Yeah, I can imagine.
No bathtubs, all shower, flush was the floor. You know, there's all these little things that you wouldn't think are such a big deal, but once you start construction,
Yeah.
the costs start adding up too, because these are very specific products that you need to add in.
For sure. And you know what? It just doesn't seem like it's a easy program to qualify for now that you mentioned all these things. Like
There's a bunch of things you can do for your building, but which is the one that's easiest for you is like, you know, depends on the building and what it
and
has.
some of these older buildings, they don't have elevators. Like, how do you get around that accessibility thing if that's a situation with no elevators?
So in that specific case, we would probably just do the accessible unit in the main floor.
Oh,
Right.
I see.
Yeah.
So you have to have particular units that are
Yeah.
for accessibility.
Yeah, it's not like a particular unit has to be that.
Uh-huh.
You can pick and choose which one.
Okay.
Right? It just depends on if it's vacant or it's big enough.
Okay.
Right? There's a lot of design consideration first. And on top of that, too, the entryway to get into the building, too, because we've had some buildings where there's not really a front lobby. There's literally a door and then just stairs up and down.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. There's a lot of that in Hamilton.
Right? So,
There's,
yeah,
a lot
because
of
I worked
the
in the
low-rise
building.
buildings are like
I didn't
that.
think so. I'd never seen that before. So when I was working with Stocko for one of our buildings, I saw something like that. I'm like,
Yeah.
where's the lobby? It's like a 4 feet little space there. I'm like, wow, this is interesting.
You're not in Toronto anymore.
I'm not in Mississauga anymore.
Mississauga.
It's like we have way bigger lobbies there, but
Oh, yeah,
that
for
was
sure.
that was interesting. So like in that particular case, it'd be tough to get accessibility in.
Exactly. Yeah. You know what? Hamilton is becoming more of a low-rise, high-rise city. If you notice, like downtown, the condos are popping up everywhere,
Right.
and buildings some of these areas they're offering bursaries to the city to freshen up the buildings on the outside.
Yeah, they're giving some grants out for like the
Yeah.
facade of the building.
Yeah.
I know a couple of investors guys were talking about one building in particular, where the entire front was all demolished somehow. They had to remove all the bricks, and I'm like, okay, what can we do to kind of bring it up?
Yeah.
So I talked to Heritage too, because it falls under Heritage, and we have to follow the same sort of design as our neighbors.
Oh,
So
yeah.
imagine
Heritage
that.
is another restriction, right?
Yeah.
So that's I know on, I'm sure you've heard of Barton Street. Barton Street in
Yeah.
Hamilton.
Yeah.
So they have a big bursary for cleaning up that street.
Oh, I see.
So Barton Street's had a bad name and a bad rep in Hamilton for many, many years. And the city's push to clean it up is ongoing, right? And they've offered bursaries to people that, to buy whoever buys the buildings or has the buildings to clean up the facade in the front. And I think it's slowly turning around now. It's slowly turning around. It's gentrifying. It's looking good. There's a lot of condos coming up downtown. I know that you noticed that. It's a lot of condos happening on the east. Hamilton was not a condo-centric city, and now it's becoming one.
Wow. Because I'm only familiar with Hamilton for like 3 years, give or take, 3-4 years. So when I hear these stories from like you, from Taco, from a lot of other investors, I'm like, really? Because I have no idea what it was 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, well, it was 15, 20 years ago, it was a completely different city. Like, you could probably buy something downtown for $200,000.
Wow.
Yeah. But I think when the condos are fully developed, those things may be close to $1 million. Detached, I'm talking about.
Right.
Brick. Like, we have some really good architectural homes. I know you noticed that architectural homes. And certain areas are doing really well, south of Maine and, Locke Street by McMaster. And, so these areas have always been good. And on the mountain has always been pretty safe investment. But now the city core downtown is growing tremendously. I'm seeing properties, even properties I flipped that were, when we bought them for $250,000 and selling them for $500, we were like, yo, we did a great flip. Now those properties are close to $800.
Wow.
So the city is actually moving in the right direction, and the LRT is on its way. There's a lot happening there. So I wanted to ask you, Henry, I know you are in the works with something here. You guys have a new network. I want to talk about it. What is the name of this network that we're hearing
Yeah.
about?
So the new network is called Grow Network, and the whole purpose of it is just to again educate some investors and you the experience and get everyone else involved, right? From the deals to the the deals, the permits, the construction, and so on, the finances as well. The whole process there. We have a wide range of people coming into that Discord server,
So
right?
you have a Discord room.
Yes.
Great, great. So grow, it stands for something. That's an acronym, right? So what does it stand for?
I'm sure you can tell me that too, right?
So the G is giving, the R is real estate, owners is O, and W is wealth. So we are part of the new Grow Network, and we are helping homeowners and real estate investors get to meet each other. Meet people like yourself, Henry, a designer, people like myself, a realtor, Aro, another realtor, Mark, Mr. Taco, as we call him, contractor, and have a place to network and talk about their pros, their cons, the goods, the bad, the ugly. Talk about some issues that they're having, experiencing, anything that if we could help each other, and we could definitely do that for each other, right? Like there is no network like that. It is a free network, guys. It's gonna be the link is gonna be below this podcast. You should definitely join the group. We're 200 people strong, 250 strong, right?
Yeah, we hit about 200 in like week 4.
Wow.
Just I think like a few days ago too. So it's like we are getting up there in the numbers,
Yeah.
right? And the good thing about this whole network thing is that for you guys aren't familiar with that, we have weekly live, events, right? So every single time, every single week, we have different people on. We talk about from the deals, construction. Every single day is going to be something different, right? It's
Yeah.
never going to be too dry in a way.
No.
Everything's going to be interesting.
And you know what I love about it? One day we're talking about triplexes, the complexity of a triplex, and how much work is involved in doing a triplex from the construction perspective, from the design perspective, from the real estate perspective. And it's a live chat with a designer, a contractor, and a realtor. So you're on live and you could ask these people questions live, where in other situations you wouldn't probably be allowed to, right? If they were just presenting, you'd have to kind of chase them down after the presentation and be like, hey, I got a question.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because it's not really a presentation. It's more of a live discussion. That's what it is. That's what we love about this community. It's like, anybody can join in. It's not just the panelists that are up there discussing about it. We love to bring people on it and just have like a massive call and discussing different points of view.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is one thing that one of the investors told me about. If you put, for example, a room full of realtors and you ask them a question,
Yeah.
they're not all going to come up with the same answer.
100%.
Everybody has different perspectives.
100%.
From your side, from my side, from Taco's side. Everybody has it. And it's good to pick their brains. What worked, what hasn't worked.
Based on their experiences, their perspective. Definitely. I definitely agree with you. And I know there's, we have educational Tuesdays. We call them Taco Tuesdays, right? Then we have we get the guys doing the flipping show. We're gonna put our show up there, the real side of real estate. Me and Aro, we're gonna be putting on some stuff there. It's a lot of great education for free.
Yeah.
Where do you go if you want education? Where do you go if you want to learn from experts that are doing it every day? Like we're doing these things every day. We're not just talking about other people's experiences. We're actually in the grind. We're in the trenches doing these things. So we're sharing our experiences, our case studies with people out there live. It's a great community. And I know we have an event coming up, right?
Yeah, we are looking to finalize that event like real soon. Like we're looking at maybe October 26th.
October
right?
26th is the day that we're having an event, guys. And anybody is going to be there. It's going to be for investors. It's going to be for contractors, realtors, designers, stagers, cleaners, roofers, you name it, all the trades. It's a great place to come network. It's going to be a great social event. We're going to have some, surprises for people that come there. We're working on some really big things in the background. It's a place that you could be yourself. and you don't have to worry about, well, I don't have as much experience as XYZ. You could be a rookie investor. You could be an expert investor. No one's there to judge you. You don't have to worry about the entrance fee. There is no entrance fee. There, it's free, right? And we're educating people, and we'd love to help people. I know you've helped lots of people, Henry, with questions that were probably rookie questions to you, and you were like, well, you know what? I remember when I was a rookie. You know what I mean? You're never gonna know unless you ask these questions, right?
Yeah, and that's the one thing that the whole Grow Network is about, right? It doesn't matter what your level is. We've heard the question multiple times, but we always love to like bring in new people and try to help them out as much as possible, right? There's no shame. There's no like nobody's competing. Like all you're doing is going against yourself here. Like you're trying to be the best of you, really.
Exactly.
Don't compare yourself to somebody else because somebody else already has more experience.
Exactly.
Right? So.
And the beauty of the Grow Network, guys, it's not Henry's, it's not mine, it's not necessarily anybody's baby. It's everybody's baby.
100%.
It's kind of a WestJet model. Everybody's an owner. So it's a place to come if you need help. It's a place to come if you need to network. It's a place to come for education. We're going to be getting started with the educational courses we're going to be providing in Hamilton, and also on the Discord live. So there's a lot of things that we can actually help people that were in our position not too long ago where, we're trying to figure out who to go to and who to ask, right? Yeah. I remember that struggle. I don't know if you remember that struggle. But myself personally, I remember that struggle where I was like, I want to invest, but who am I going to talk to? I had particular clients that were doing it, so I'll talk to them. I had architects that I knew. I'd ask them questions, but it was all like helter-skelter all around. I had to find people and ask them questions. And like you said, everybody has their own perspective, so you're like kind of pulled and pushed everywhere, right? Within our community, it's all in the same place. You have a room for flipping. You have a room for book club. You have a room for books to read. You have a room for live chats,
and horror stories. Don't forget that.
Horror stories. Like that's what I'm saying, guys. Like it's a place to call home. You know what I mean? Like, and no one's there to judge you. There's actually a section where you come introduce yourself and say what you do, which I thought that was really cool. Because if you don't know someone, and you're looking for someone, like I'm looking for a designer. You're looking there, oh, Henry's name's a designer. Maybe Bob or John's a designer, right? So there's 3 or 4 designers in there. So you don't have to like, oh my God, I got to go through the yellow pages. I don't even know if the yellow pages exist anymore, right? Like I got to go on Google reviews, It's all there. You get to meet these people. You get to meet these people at our events. You get to meet these people at our live chats. These people are not out of connection with you. You could reach out to them, and they're willing to help you. So I'm super excited for that event coming up. And actually, we're going to an event soon, you and I, right? We're going to one on Thursday.
100%.
What event is that? That's the WINK event, guys. Mm-hmm. The Women's Investment Network of Canada. And it's sold out, guys. That event's sold out. So it's going to be a great event. And we have a surprise for you guys there. Should we tell them? We're not going to tell them, Henry?
Oh, we might want to tell them,
You might want to tell them? So we will be going live from that event on our Discord, which is, the link is below. Please join. It's going to be a great event. Awesome guest speakers there. They're talking about short-term, long-term rentals. I'm always interested in learning about that because, it's good to know, right? It's good to know about the short-term, long-term rentals, Airbnbs, stuff like that, midterm rentals. This is something that, I want to highlight one day. There is a lady coming to talk about the Residential Tenancy Act.
Wow. She's
part of the landlord on Landlord Watch or something like that.
Yes, the Facebook group.
Yeah, Facebook group. There we go. So she's the main lady there. So I'm really interested to see what she has to say.
We'll have to pick her brain a little bit on different, what's going on there.
Different scenarios, right? Like, what do you do if this happens? What do you do if that happens? We all have funny stories with tenants.
Yep, that never dies. It's always going to be around.
Yeah, man. So I look forward to that, man. And thank you so much for coming on.
100%. Appreciate it, man.
You know what? It was a great time, and I look forward to to working with you with the Grow Network and see if we could grow together. Thank you so much.